I am Effie Simmons, Director of Transformation at WithYou, or We Are With You if you want our official legal name, but we don't really use that very much. And I'm going to talk us through how we got to Cyber Essentials Plus with the help of Cocho. I am going to talk more about the kind of user perspective and how we work with our staff, less of the technical side of stuff. After all, that's what Cocho were there for. So just starting us off, I'll give you a bit of an intro into who we are. So we provide confidential support for anybody that is suffering with mental health, drug or alcohol challenges. We work with families, we work with adults, we work with young people, and we have about 80 services across the UK, so right up in the very top of Scotland, all the way down to Penzance in Cornwall, which does mean that we've got a lot of spread geographically. The kind of things that we offer, so I did mention a couple of those already, but we do also have a kind of digital service. So if you go along to our website, you can go onto a web chat and talk to a kind of trained advisor who is on the other end of that. So we've got a few different things to try and manage, and the biggest thing for us is that we have 1,800 staff and volunteers across 50 different sites. And they are all helped by a remote IT team. So anytime anything goes wrong, we've got to try and connect the service to the remote IT staff. We've only got a team of 4, so we've got in our IT function, and they mostly focus on that kind of front line, you know, I've lost my password, I've lost my device, the Wi-Fi's gone down, any of those kind of things. Because of the nature of what we do, we have a lot of people who've lived experience, so they've been through some challenges with drugs and alcohol or mental health, and our general user base is, I would say, low to moderate in kind of technical confidence, and sometimes even that's a little bit higher than where they're at. So trying to deliver any technical change is a bit of a challenge, but it's a fun challenge sometimes. And also what we want to make sure is that they can focus on doing this and they aren't being distracted and kind of frustrated by where our IT is at. So how do we partner with Cocho? As I mentioned, we've got a team of 4 in our service that kind of deal with your frontline immediate pieces. But we partner with Cocho in 2 ways. So we have the professional service team, and they help us with the kind of bigger pieces. So they did help us with the cybersecurity, but also with that kind of overarching transformation. So bigger projects that we want to deliver for our teams. And then we have the managed service. So we have the network and our devices are kind of looked after by WithYou through the support desk. They give us that third line support. So when our team can't handle it, that goes over to Cocho to get some help. And they also manage our security for us. It's a bit of peace of mind with our team not having to spend too much time on that. So where were we in January of 2024? This is an interesting little kind of image, which is trying to represent the fact that we had one person who had many, many, many ways of logging into something. And obviously, Cyber Essentials is about much more than how you log into things. But in terms of what was impacting our users, if I just take you through a little journey of what it's like to be one of our staff. So they would come in the morning and they would open up their laptop or their Chromebook, because we are a Google and Microsoft organisation, and I will not get into why that decision was made or how we got to where we got to, but I had to deal with that, and we had to work through that. So you'd open your laptop or your Chromebook, and you would log in with a password, and then you would open your Chrome, and you would log in with another password to access your email, and then you might want to book holiday, so you're going to log in with another password, and so on and so forth through pretty much every single system that we have. So what does this mean for our staff? Well, a lot of our staff are out and about. They work in community, they're in their cars travelling to clients. So they clearly thought the easiest way that I can remember all these logins is to write them down, and a lot of them have stuck them on their laptops just to make sure that when they needed the passwords, they were there. So for us, thinking about cybersecurity and Cyber Essentials Plus, that was definitely a no-go, and we really needed to work with our staff to understand why this would be good for them. A lot of people didn't really like IT because in their experience, IT was automatically changing their password, which is why they kept on getting them wrong. Nothing to do with the fact that there was lots of different passwords, that they couldn't remember which one to use when. So they really saw IT as quite of a blocker and definitely not helping them in their job, but tending to be quite annoying. So the idea of us doing this big project that they'd have to do some change for was definitely not very welcome. However, we did also have some fun, which is that our local authorities, who fund most of our funding comes from them, said that actually to win any more contracts, you're going to have Cyber Essentials Plus. So it was no longer kind of, a nice to have. It was definitely living up to its name. And now in order to actually exist as an organisation, we had to have it. So in January, we set the goal to achieve Cyber Essentials Plus by the 1st of April. I don't know about you guys, but for us, 4 months was quite a tight time frame to try and get that done. And that was because we had contracts that were starting around that date. So we didn't have much of a choice. We had to get moving towards it. So I'll be honest, we didn't meet the deadline, just spoiling that for everybody. But we have got it now, and this was over a year ago, so we definitely got there eventually. So what were the challenges that we mainly faced? Now, we obviously had Coacho helping us with a lot of the technical side of things, but even they did have to spend quite a bit of time balancing how we dealt with Google and Microsoft. Not only did we have Google and Microsoft, but we obviously had Intune, we had our Chromebooks on the Google MDM, and we had this nice little kind of, I would say nice, I don't think Coacho thought it was very nice, but they were very understanding about the situation that we were in, and that in order to achieve Cyber Essentials, we weren't going to be able to just take Google out in those 4 months and fundamentally change how the business is working. So they really worked with us to figure out how we can get to where we need to get to, working with both of those pieces. And it did involve a lot of kind of looking at what are staff using for what, where can we replace things, where can we make sure that we're talking to staff about updating bits and pieces. So that was definitely a huge challenge that we managed to work through. Secondly, for us, as I mentioned before, we were remote and we had over 50 locations across the country. So we know it's much easier for staff that don't have that technical expertise, that you can sit with them, or you have somebody technical that can be near them, that can support them. We were trying to do that for over 1,800 staff across 50 different locations. And so for us, the way that we combated that was putting people in place where we could, but also taking that timeline and extending it out so we could do this gently with staff. And that's another reason that the timeline got pushed. We also had a bit of an issue with handling non-compliance. Now, I don't know how you guys work in this space, but one thing that we didn't really anticipate coming up against was the cultural barrier around boundaries. So the organisation that we work in obviously works with lots of people who are facing challenges and who are struggling, so we have quite a tolerant approach to that. We have a culture that's very accepting, if you make mistakes. That makes it quite tricky to put some hard and fast boundaries in about whether or not you can use a device that's non-compliant. It sounds really obvious, you shouldn't be able to, and obviously Cyber Essentials Plus tells you that, but culturally trying to help people understand that we weren't punishing you, we weren't, being mean. This was actually about setting those boundaries. And it took a long time to convince people that actually if we set those boundaries, people will be able to react to them and act accordingly. So we eventually did set the boundary in that if the device is non-compliant, it's going to be locked and you're going to get a lock screen on your device. And what we actually found from that was that it really adapted people's behaviour. So they had a firm boundary in place, and now they could no longer would they kind of go, oh, it's fine, I don't need to update. Now they were, number one, actually updating it when it asked to be updated, which I'll take that. That is definitely a win. But secondly, for those that had experienced this, they realised that they didn't want to get into this position again. They didn't want to be sitting with a client and open that laptop and find out that it's been blocked. That didn't happen a lot, it only happened to a few people. But it was enough that they then went, oh, I'm going to actually turn my laptop off once a week and allow it to update. Hooray, it was absolutely wonderful. And then finally, our kind of other main challenge, and this one did take us quite a long time to battle through. I don't know how many of you have worked with prisons, but prisons can be quite particular about what they let into the prison. Who'd have thunk? And so we thought, oh, MFA tokens will be fine. You can't do anything with them. They're just for logging on. No, there was quite a rigorous process of going through, and every single prison in the UK has a different governor who has a different take on whether or not they'll allow these things in. So lots of conversations there and trying to get that moved through. Eventually all of them agreed, but it did take a few months to get everyone to that point. So as you can see, there were some quite interesting pieces for us to talk through. Definitely the Google and Microsoft would be my least favourite in trying to balance that. But we are where we are, and we've managed to get through it. So the result, I don't know how many of you have guessed how much longer it took, but we managed to get there by the start of June last year. So it was only 2 months, and for how many people and for how much kind of struggle we had, I'm pretty happy with that result, I'll be honest. So what did we do? Well, firstly, as I mentioned, we had those devices getting up to date, which meant actually for staff, they then had fewer tickets coming into the help desk, because what they hadn't realised was that when they weren't updating their devices, as many of us will know, that actually makes them work worse because they haven't got all the things that they need. And so our tickets for our devices started to drop. We also connected Google and Microsoft, which probably is one of my favourite things, because now people don't understand that there's two different things happening. They just think they've got one magic login and that Google and Microsoft are somehow united, which for those of us who know was never going to happen. So it's very nice that they see that as one piece. And then we extended that same single sign-on across all those different systems. And now I have people that come up to us and say, oh, can you add this system on, please? Those are people that previously were like, I don't think this is a good idea. This is a complete pain. We're never going to understand this. It's too difficult for us. So real great success there. And also less of a win for our staff. They still hate this. I don't know if we're ever going to get them to a point where they like the authenticator, but they do it and they have it on their devices and they use it to log in. And even if they are writing their password down, I can sleep safe at night knowing that they've at least got another step to be able to get in to devices. So yes, they're never going to love it, but at least they're using it. Ooh, there we go. So just kind of fast forwarding to where we are today, and I'm saying this with a little bit of a fingers crossed because we submitted the questionnaire, but we're just waiting for the final bits to come through. But we have renewed, and we've renewed in a much, or we are renewing, we're renewing in a much shorter time frame than it took us the first time, which is absolutely wonderful, and we're very, very proud to be able to say that. With the main kind of big transformation behind us, what we're doing is shifting to the day-to-day, and we have been looking with the managed service team now at our Microsoft Secure score. I won't say where we started on this, but we have increased by about 20 to 25% in the last 6 months. So that has been absolutely huge for us, and it is a testament to the fact that we've done all of the Cyber Essentials groundwork that we could start to do this. We've also strengthened our conditional access policies. And again, these sound quite obvious when you're standing in a room and telling people, but when we actually spoke to our organisation, there were a whole bunch of policies and things that we had not lined up with our IT policies. So you cannot, according to organisation policy, work abroad. You just can't. You're not allowed to log in. You're not allowed to access your emails. IT policies, you could do whatever you wanted. You could be wherever you wanted. You could do it, at any time. So just starting to line up some of those policies and actually get the IT team talking to the rest of the organisation about actually what rules do we already have in place that we can just apply to the technology. And that working abroad one was probably the biggest one, but there was loads that kind of came under that piece. So that was definitely a massive learning for our technical team. So next up, we are going to be upskilling our staff. So this is a big one for us. It's because we've got that low to moderate confidence in IT. Phishing is a massive thing for us. We have lots of clients that are emailing staff, so it's really easy for people to see something coming in from elsewhere, thinking it's a client and not realising. So we're working with COCHO to look at kind of phishing simulation, but also general cyber awareness training and what we can do in that space. We are doing an interesting piece working with our partners. So the way that we work is we have a lot of contracts. And some of those contracts, we have subcontractors. And we have to work with the same client across those subcontractors. And the way that we have been working, and I'm quite embarrassed to say this, but when we found it out, we did start doing something about it, is that they were just firing Excels off to each other and client information across email between different spaces. And so this is going to be a significant change, which is allowing the partner to come into our space and contain it all within where we're working. Definitely much better for our clients' information and just generally for our security. And that was something that was actually suggested by Cocho when we kind of mentioned it offhand in a conversation. So that's definitely a big piece for us. And then finally, just looking at our network. So because we've got so many services across the country, because we've got people out and about, having a look at what we can do there to make that work better for our staff, while keeping our clients' information and our clients safe, but allowing them that kind of movement at the same time. Okie doke. So, final thoughts. Hopefully I've gained back some of the time that we lost before. For me, the biggest one here is that we started off this process really focusing on what the security improvements were going to be for staff, and they don't care. Like, frankly, they do not care. They just want to make their lives to be as easy as possible. So we pivoted in our communications and just talked about the stuff that they cared about. We didn't even mention some of the really cool things that we would think were cool that they did not care about. So the whole of our Cyber Essentials Plus certification journey just became, we're giving you single sign-on. That's all we told them. That's all we anyone that wanted to know more information, obviously we weren't hiding it, but all of the communication was basically, this cool thing is coming. Oh, and by the way, this is other stuff that you might have to do some things about, but this cool thing is coming for you, and demonstrating that and really making it about that. And like I say, the way that that's then turned out for staff is that they've all gone, oh, this was a great experience. This was really wonderful. I wish I could say the same. It wasn't quite as wonderful as that. But it's been a real lesson for me is even if there is the tiniest of things that seems insignificant to you as an IT team, but that a user goes, oh, that's quite interesting, just really lean into it. Really make that the forefront of what you're talking about. Strong partnerships, I think, is another massive learning. So I think Jack, our account manager, would agree that we had a little bit of an issue right at the start with how our IT team worked with Cocho. And we actually spent a lot of time on building that relationship and getting that working a bit better. Because ultimately, what we realised is that when we are working on these projects, we are actually in a single team, and all of that kind of team building and communication styles and all of that stuff that you would do within an internal team, you need to do with your external partners as well, so that you can make sure that you are speaking and you are raising things as you need to. And then finally, one of the things for this year is that really glad that we worked on sustaining it, not just doing it once and then waiting until the next year for it to come around. Because now this time round, it has been a lot easier, and we hope by next year it will be barely a blip on the calendar that we can pass through. I think that's everything that I've got. So thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Any questions, please do let me know.